I'm Ashton Addison from Blockwest Capital for Investment Pitch Media and the Crypto Coin Show. And today on Blockchain Interviews, we have Cory Klippsten, founder of Swan Bitcoin. Cory, welcome to the show, and thank you for taking the time to come on.
Hey, Ashton, thanks so much for having me.
You're very welcome. Let's dive into Bitcoin, Swan Bitcoin. More and more people are just buying Bitcoin. There's more and more reasons to be buying Bitcoin and holding it now than ever. And I'm interested in hearing how Swan Bitcoin is going along with this progression. So let's just kick off our conversation to start, Cory, with a little bit about what is Swan Bitcoin and what is the main focus of the business.
Yeah, I mean, our goal is to be your Bitcoin wingman. So basically serve all your Bitcoin needs. And obviously that starts with being able to buy Bitcoin as easily and seamlessly with super low fees as possible. So you can do one-time small buys, large buys, set up automatic recurring purchase plans, or DCA, dollar cost average. A lot of people like to call it that. And then we're expanding into a lot of other areas. So we have a private client services division and an advisor services team that handles like more complicated situations for businesses, for trusts, IRA rollovers, kind of all the different ways that people around the world want to buy with entities or, people from other countries. We have a very large international business where there's not a good local exchange or a local broker, and we're actually the best option. So that's been great to see that kind of expand over the last couple of years. And later this year, we're launching the Swan app in March. We're building in the self-custodial Lightning wallet into the Swan app that will be non-KYC'd interface in the same app. We'll be launching a Swan credit card with sats back. So basically, Bitcoiners kind of hold their nose when they when they want to get that. They'll use BlockFi even though they don't like the company. So it makes sense that a Bitcoin company would actually offer that instead. Lots of exciting stuff. And that's really the overarching goal and kind of driving force behind everything we do is to just be the most trusted name in Bitcoin.
Definitely, and that's great to hear about all these other products and services that you're working on. I thought, you can buy Bitcoin, great. And there's a lot of places now that you can buy Bitcoin, and it's hard to, if you just have that one product, like how do you compete? When people hear Swan Bitcoin, now that's where I can buy Bitcoin. Is there a specific selling point or competitive advantage in how you can differentiate Swan Bitcoin from other on-ramp places where you can just buy Bitcoin regularly?
Yeah, I mean, we've always been, I think Bitcoin only is a big thing because, if you're, let's say, I'll give an example because you have a pretty savvy audience. We get a ton of referrals from like crypto fund managers to Swan, which seems counterintuitive, but because those guys actually know how the sausage is made and they understand the game afoot and they understand, the kind of information asymmetry you have to win in non-Bitcoin crypto. When it comes to their friends, their family, friends from, school or whatever, they're sending those people to Swan because they know that we will keep them on the straight and narrow and, buy the one asset in the whole space that is actually doing exactly what it's supposed to do and has been since inception is, basically has the left end of the possible distribution completely chopped off. It's really hard to imagine a scenario in which Bitcoin isn't worth a lot more in purchasing power in the future.
Definitely, yeah. And it's interesting that you mentioned that about fund managers and more enterprises coming in and bigger partners as well as just individuals and sort of retail investors. I'm curious, running the platform for multiple years now, looking at the trends of who is buying or what kind of customers are signing up, are you seeing a major increase in both like institutional and retail on the platform?
Yeah, so people have very fuzzy definitions of institutional. What we would call institutional is really not our target at all. So institutions are like banks, funds. It's basically where the decision maker is an agent for other people's money. Swan is basically focused on the principal, the person buying for themselves, or who is like way closer to the buyer. So I think family offices, small and medium-sized businesses, like all of those, we're the only company that's going to give you sort of that white glove service that you would expect from like a, Goldman Sachs, PWM, or Morgan Stanley Private Client Services or something like that for those types of buyers. And then obviously on the sort of the retail side with the website and the upcoming app, that's about having a beautiful product. It's about having low fair fees. It's about transparency. It's about a ton of education and community. We invest more in education and content than any company in the Bitcoin space by probably an order of magnitude. It's kind of what we're known for. A lot of the top authors and podcasters are on staff at Swan. So, Jan Pritzker wrote Inventing Bitcoin. He's the CTO. Andy Edstrom wrote Why Buy Bitcoin. He runs advisor services. Stefan Livera from Stefan Livera podcast is one of our sales guys. Brady Swenson from Citizen Bitcoin, runs marketing and education. So on and on and on. The whole team is kind of just stacked with a lot of the top experts in the world about Bitcoin. And what people want when they're going to go past sort of the, okay, I'm going to punt 1 or 2% of my portfolio on crypto and take some flyers on these coins. When they actually start to understand Bitcoin, the conversation becomes way, way, way deeper. And they need to be able to trust that they're actually getting good advice and not just BS, not just hopium from the company that they're dealing with. And so we stand, with full integrity, with, on our 2 feet with everything that we talk about, and have realistic views about Bitcoin and where it's going and what the risks are. And it gives people confidence to go essentially much, much deeper into, their own net worth, their share of wallet, and be heading more toward, 10%, 20%, 50%, 80% of their net worth going into Bitcoin. So that's why it's sustainable, because, the crypto traders don't have conviction about the actual things that they're buying. That's why they're trading them instead of holding them, right? So it's a very different model when you're thinking about Bitcoin. And, as people gain conviction about Bitcoin, they buy a lot more. And if you're that partner that helps them on that path, it can be very profitable.
Definitely. And I really do appreciate what Swan is doing on the education side. And I totally understand when you say you're putting out a lot of content. Just this morning, I went on crypto Twitter and I saw that Swan was doing Twitter Spaces, and there was the team was in there all talking to people, and there was hundreds of people just listening in. So incredible work so far. So congratulations on that. I really do think it's more than just buying a coin.
Yeah, that has been a nice outlet for us. It's called Cafe Bitcoin, and it's basically the main daily discussion on both Clubhouse and on Twitter for social audio about Bitcoin is Cafe Bitcoin. And yeah, like most days, it's over 1,000 people concurrent. 4,000 or 5,000 people will dial in during the space. Then it's a podcast and gets a few more thousand views or more listens. So yeah, it's nice to have that outlet. It's a good place to, kind of get your morning fill of Bitcoin, catch up on the news, learn some amazing stuff. We had, Stefan Livera, Guy Swan, Brady Swenson, Tomer Strolight, Alex Stanzik, Tone Vase, a bunch of other people in there today, as usual.
Amazing. And you mentioned some of the things that are coming up for Swan, like the app and a card to be able to spend Bitcoin. And what I really took note in there is you mentioned that it was like a non-KYC sort of self-custodian.
Not spend Bitcoin. You'll spend fiat and get Bitcoin rewards. So it's literally just that Sats back. Yeah, the Sats back credit card. Yeah. Hopefully you'll have some fiat inflows to pay off that bill. Pay it off however you want. But yeah, it's just like we see BlockFi and Gemini and SoFi and Venmo. There's 6 or 7 Sats back rewards cards out there right now, not one by a Bitcoin company. Right. So the message is just coming from the wrong group of people there. So we're excited to be able to launch that. Definitely.
And I'd love to hear your opinion on, in the recent news, there's always conversations about Bitcoin being on exchanges or being on somewhere where you're trading it, where somebody else has your keys and it's not really self-custodian. And now we're seeing governments starting to move in and if they don't like it, they're freezing people's Bitcoin accounts where they're tied to the bank accounts. And I feel like there's an ever more present need to have more sort of self-custodial options and the education on why people should be storing them to not, have your access cut off by somebody else.
Absolutely, yeah. So we've always been set up for people to take self-custody. We educated about it constantly. Our company's goal, our KPI for custody is 0 Bitcoin under custody. That's our goal. So about 70% of people take their coins off of platform. It's free to custody with us, and it's free withdrawals. Either you can set up automatic withdrawals, or you can do it manually. Either way, it's free to withdraw. We are not trying to hold on to people's coins. We don't want them. Yeah. We even built like a really cool XPub tool that was the first of its kind, which is an XPub basically can create like 1,000 or more, different addresses, all tied to the same wallet, and nobody had ever figured out how to do that trustlessly. So if you were using an XPub, the exchange would actually have your XPub and thus also know all of your addresses. And we figured out a way last year to do that, where you basically enter the XPub into a tool, and then trustlessly and provably we extract. It sends us the first 1,000 addresses from the XPub that we can then use for withdrawals, but we never actually see the XPub. So always doing things like that where we can kind of push the envelope on improved privacy and help people use Bitcoin the right way.
Very cool, Cory. And I'm familiar with the XPub function. I think people need to know about that, because that's a huge privacy advantage to have a unique address, which is going into the same wallet it appears to be going into the same wallet. And you don't have people looking into all of your funds is still a major issue, and a big issue that with Ethereum as well. It doesn't really have that functionality, and that's why we have Bitcoin. I'm curious on, as more people start using Swan Bitcoin and different generations of people are starting to realize that they should be owning some Bitcoin, do you see specific generations as being key to the next part of mainstream adoption of this cryptocurrency? For example, Gen Zs and the younger crowd really seem to be attracted to Bitcoin, but also there's a lot of value in older generations and boomers understanding that this is actually something that should be validated and become a proper currency as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of both. You want number go up, and it is monetary protocol, so you want the value to move into the Bitcoin protocol and be stored there. And that wealth is obviously concentrated with the older generations, kind of boomers and upper Gen X, let's say. But number of people go up is a huge deal too. And, the percentage of millennials and Gen Z, Zoomers that might come in, their smaller stacks can add up to a lot. I think it's important to attack it from both sides. And then it also, these generations have parents and kids, right? So the Zoomer might fall in love with Swan and then tell their rich auntie about Swan, right? And then she's buying millions of dollars from us. And then also, the boomers are set to, in the US anyway, the stat is they're going to be handing off $30 trillion of inheritance to millennials over the next decade. $30 trillion. Wow. And that's going to be in like non-yield bearing bonds and commercial real estate with no tenants and all these other asset classes, gold bars, like whatever it is, the propensity for the newly rich trust fund millennial to want to put more of that into Bitcoin is very high.
Definitely. Yeah. I keep getting flashbacks to like Michael Saylor talking about how Bitcoin is the hardest, best, most movable, fungible money in the world, and especially to have something like commercial real estate that will now be empty buildings. Who knows what's going to happen with all of that capital, and if people especially want to move it across borders.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't have a lot of time left, Cory, but you did mention there's a lot of cool updates coming for Swan Bitcoin. I'm really excited to see this Sats back card. For the viewers that are looking to look at more options on how to buy Bitcoin, how to dollar cost average, the education that you're putting out, and the updates that are coming out, what is the best way for them to follow along?
Swan.com.
Very simple.
It's easy. Yeah, go to swan.com. But no, I would say follow us on Twitter, which is @SwanBitcoin. That's a good place to hang out. And then If you're kind of looking deeper into Bitcoin, like you've been messing around with crypto for a while, but you've never really kind of gone down the rabbit hole, the best book that I ever found that was like, it's like a 2.5 hour time investment to listen to it or read it actually is Jan's book, Inventing Bitcoin. I find that recommended over and over again, especially with people that travel around the world and have to go to like Asia or Singapore or Hong Kong or UAE or whatever. They'll just bring paperbacks of this thing. Anyway, we give it away for free now, which is awesome. So you can actually grab an ebook or an audiobook at swanbitcoin.com/free book and just grab a copy of Jan's book, and you can give that to whoever you want. Spread the love. Orange pill the world.
Very cool, Cory. I love that. I'm going to check out the book. I appreciate you coming on the show to talk about Swan and to talk about Bitcoin. All the best to Swan and to Bitcoin as well moving forward, and let's follow up in the near future.
Sounds great, Ashton. Thanks for having me on.